There comes a moment in every life where a decision must be made, not a casual wish or a fleeting intention, but a firm declaration etched deep into the consciousness. I will achieve this goal, and nothing will stop me. From that moment forward, the world begins to shift. The invisible gears of the universe move, but not because fate is kind, not because luck is generous, but because you finally declared yourself as the master, and you forced your will into motion. The beginning of all greatness is desire, and not just ordinary longing, but white, hot, unstoppable desire that occupies the mind like a raging fire. It refuses to let you sleep. It pulls at your spirit when you try to retreat. It demands your devotion. That is the seed of transformation. But desire alone will not take you where you want to go. Every graveyard is filled with dreamers who desired much but did little. Every wasted life once possessed a wish. The question is never do you want it. The question is, will you pay for it in action, in sweat, in sacrifice? Desire, when not backed by discipline, is an illusion, a fantasy, a mirage that fades the closer you approach. And this is why the weak remain where they are, because they wait for desire to do the work of discipline. But the ones who rise, the ones who claim the mountain and plant their flag at the top, are those who learned to force themselves, to move when they didn't feel like moving, to grind when comfort called them back, to push when doubt whispered in their ears, and in forcing themselves, they discover something strange. The more they pushed, the more the world yielded. Discipline is the bridge between desire and achievement. It is the force that converts dreams into results. When you force yourself to act in the direction of your goal, you send a signal to your subconscious mind that this is serious. You instruct every cell of your being to align with victory. This isn't a game, this isn't a test, this is the path, and it will be walked. The secret the average man never understands is this: discipline is not a feeling, it is a command. It does not beg for your cooperation, it demands your obedience. If you wait to feel disciplined, you will live a lifetime of regret. If you wait to feel ready, you will never rise. The ones who win in this life do not wait for motivation, they manufacture it. They drag themselves from the bed of excuses and into the battlefield of purpose. They move even when they are tired, and in that movement, something miraculous begins to happen. Their internal world begins to change. Thoughts become sharper, focus becomes deeper, the spirit becomes stronger. The act of forcing yourself creates internal momentum, and momentum is a magic most will never understand. It is the force that makes heavy tasks feel lighter. It is the energy that makes fear feel smaller. One disciplined action leads to another. One act of obedience to your goal leads to 10 more, and before long, you're no longer forcing, you're flowing. But it all begins with the first push, the first forceful step, the first decision that says, I will act now, not later. This is where the elite separate themselves from the masses. The common man waits for perfect conditions. The uncommon man creates them. The masses wait for the perfect time to begin. The master begins and makes the time perfect. This power to command your own mind, to force your body to obey your decisions, is what separates the average from the extraordinary. And this power is in you. It is dormant perhaps, but not absent. It waits only for your decision to wake it. The mind is a tool, a magnificent tool, but left undirected, it becomes a master. Left untrained, it drags you into weakness. Your job is not to follow the mind's mood, your job is to dictate it, to give it instructions, to demand excellence from it. And the moment you begin to issue those commands with certainty, you'll find that your mind begins to obey. And when the mind obeys, the body follows. And when the body follows, the world begins to respond. Command yourself to act, and you activate unseen forces. You begin to access reservoirs of energy and creativity you didn't know you possessed. Why? Because your mind has been waiting for leadership. It has been waiting for you to rise above your emotions and lead it to your goal like a general commands an army. The weak allow the enemy of laziness to enter their camp and take over. The strong defend the gate with discipline. There is no magic formula more powerful than this. Act first, emotions follow. Do not negotiate with feelings. Do not consult your mood. Your goal does not care if you're tired. Your dream does not care if you're stressed. Your destiny does not care if you're scared. It responds only to your ability to act despite all of that. And this right here, is what most will never do. But if you will act when others would retreat, you will enter a category of living few ever taste. Action breeds clarity, motion dissolves fear, but none of that happens unless you first force yourself. Force yourself to rise, force yourself to start, force yourself to persist, and in doing so, you begin to rewire your brain. You train it to expect action. You condition it to perform. The brain is plastic moldable, and it responds to repetition. When you consistently force it in the direction of discipline, it adapts. It becomes sharper. Your decision-making improves. Your willpower strengthens. Your confidence grows. Suddenly, what once seemed hard becomes natural. What once felt impossible becomes effortless. But don't be fooled, it wasn't ease that brought you here. It was force, relentless, daily, uncompromising force of will. You didn't wait for change, you became the change. You didn't wait for doors to open, you kicked them down. You didn't wait for permission, you gave it to yourself. The truth that will set you free is this: you have far more power than you think, not just some of the time, not just when things are going well, but always. That power lies dormant until you summon it through decisive action. The most successful people you admire didn't begin with more talent, more luck, or more support. They began with a decision. They began by forcing themselves when every part of them wanted to quit. They didn't allow the world to decide their rhythm. They set the tempo and made the world adjust. And when you live like this, with intention, with urgency, with ire, will, discipline, everything begins to fall into place. Not because the universe is kind, but because you've stopped waiting and started creating. You've stopped hoping and started commanding. The moment you stop bowing to your feelings and begin forcing yourself toward your goals, you rise above the noise of mediocrity. You silence the distractions. You step out of the line of the average and into the arena of the elite. That moment, that decision, is when everything begins to align, because you've aligned yourself, because your actions now reflect your purpose, because your choices now mirror your desires, because you finally understand that success does not come to those who wait, but to those who move and keep moving. Force is not aggression. It is self-respect. It is the declaration that you will no longer abandon your potential. It is the decision that says, I will take what belongs to me not someday, but today. And that force, when applied daily, with courage and consistency, becomes the catalyst for a life that unfolds in harmony with your vision. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Not because the path became easier, but because you became stronger. And this strength, forged in the furnace of daily discipline, becomes your greatest weapon in the pursuit of your ultimate goal. There is a hidden law at work in your life, a law more powerful than mere positive thinking or casual intention. It is the law that governs the rise of all achievers, all leaders, all men and women who have ever accomplished anything of lasting worth. That law is this: faith and force must walk hand in hand. One without the other is powerless. Faith alone is a dreamer's whisper. Force alone is blind energy. But when you combine unwavering faith with deliberate force, you create the type of power that bends reality itself. True faith is not passive. It does not sit and wait. It does not hope. It moves. It acts. It pursues. Real faith is demonstrated not by words, but by action that continues even when there is no visible reward. When you force yourself to move forward toward your goal, even when you cannot see how the outcome will unfold, that is faith in its purest form. That is belief made visible. Every time you move with conviction, you are proving to yourself and to the universe that you trust in your vision. You are telling your subconscious mind that the goal you hold is not negotiable, and your subconscious mind begins to align with that belief. It starts searching for ways to manifest it. Ideas arise, energy increases, unexpected opportunities emerge, but none of it begins until you move, until you force your body into action, until you declare through effort that your belief is not a mere fantasy, but a demand. Those who wait for certainty before they act will die waiting. Those who wait for perfect clarity will be passed by. But those who act in the face of doubt, those who force themselves forward when fear is present, they unlock the kind of strength that most never tap into. They understand that clarity is the reward of action, not the requirement for it. Faith grows stronger with every step forward, and action, when repeated with consistency, becomes the evidence that faith is alive. You cannot separate the two. If you say you believe but refuse to act, your belief is hollow. If you act without belief, your steps are scattered and weak. But when you act with full belief and reinforce that belief with forceful action, the world cannot help but respond. This is why success appears to magically follow the committed. It is not magic. It is cause and effect. The man who forces himself to wake early, to train, to think, to plan, to move, to grind even when others are resting, that man radiates certainty. He carries a presence that others can feel. That presence draws people. It attracts resources. It commands respect. But it only exists because he made the decision to back his belief with daily effort, with discipline, with unshakable will. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to have the most connections. But you must possess the rare and powerful combination of belief and force. You must act like the outcome is already written, and your only job is to show up each day and fulfill what is already yours. Not with arrogance, but with conviction. Not with desperation, but with confidence. And yet, most people will never live this way. They will continue waiting for permission, waiting for proof, waiting for a sign, and in doing so, they delay their own destiny, but you must choose differently. You must wake up and decide, again and again, that your vision will not be delayed another day, that your energy will not be wasted on doubt, that your time will not be surrendered to indecision. And when you live this way with faith in your vision and force in your step, you begin to see everything shift. Even resistance begins to serve you. Even obstacles become allies, because something remarkable happens when you consistently force yourself forward. You become stronger. You become sharper. The weight that once held you down now builds your muscle. The fear that once paralyzed you now sharpens your edge. Because you understand that resistance builds power. The masses fear resistance. They retreat at the first sign of discomfort. They fold when things don't go their way. But the greats, the ones who rise to levels others only read about, they understand that resistance is the very tool that sculpts them into greatness. They welcome it, they embrace it, they lean into it, because they know that the obstacle is not in the way, it is the way. Every time you face resistance and choose to keep moving, you are transforming. You are forging a character that cannot be broken. You are building an inner world so resilient, so stable, that no outer storm can shake you. But this does not happen by accident. It happens through force, through repetition, through the deliberate act of rising when you'd rather rest, of working when you'd rather watch, of building when you'd rather break. The man who forces himself daily becomes immune to excuses. He becomes immune to distractions. His mind is trained for war. His emotions are not in control, he is. And in that emotional mastery, he finds leverage. Because while others are tossed by the winds of mood, he is anchored by discipline. While others wait to feel motivated, he creates his own fire. He knows that the only way to eliminate weakness is to confront it, head on, repeatedly, without mercy, And here lies the real truth: you do not become powerful by avoiding struggle. You become powerful by confronting it, overcoming it, and learning from it. And that learning only occurs when you engage fully with the process, when you push yourself into the places where growth lives. And growth never lives in comfort. Growth lives in resistance. It lives in challenge. It lives in pressure, and only those willing to force themselves into those places will ever access it. Your mind, like your body, becomes what you train it to be. If you train it to retreat, it will become weak. If you train it to hesitate, it will become timid. But if you train it to act, to push, to move especially in the face of difficulty, it will become unstoppable. It will respond to commands like a well-trained army. It will execute under pressure. It will focus when others panic. It will hold the line when others break, and that mental strength becomes your advantage. It becomes your edge in a world filled with distraction and softness. It becomes your shield against mediocrity, because the truth is, most people are soft. They hide from pressure. They run from responsibility. They avoid the very process that would transform them, but not you, because you have chosen to force yourself, and in that force you gain access to levels of clarity, power, and performance that others only talk about. So every day you feel resistance, thank it. It is your training partner. Every time you want to quit, lean in. That moment is your breakthrough. Every time you feel doubt, act anyway. That action is your power. You are not here to be ruled by feelings. You are not here to be governed by circumstance. You are here to dominate your own mind, your own body, your own path, and to do it through force of will, through disciplined action, through relentless repetition that transforms chaos into clarity and pressure into power. The world does not yield to the wishes of the weak. It does not surrender its treasures to those who merely hope. It observes, it tests, it waits. It watches to see who is willing to endure. And when it finds someone who will not quit, who will not retreat, who forces himself forward no matter the terrain, the world begins to make room. That is the moment everything starts falling into place, not out of charity, but in response to commitment. The reason why so many never experience the power of alignment, the magic where everything begins to click, is because they refuse to pay the cost. And make no mistake, there is always a cost. Success is expensive. It demands your energy, your time, your discomfort, and your willingness to sacrifice what is easy for what is necessary. The people who seem lucky are often just those who refused to quit when nothing made sense. They were still showing up when the results weren't showing up. And then suddenly the tide turned, but it didn't turn randomly. It turned because their consistency earned the right to results. Understand this truth. The universe does not reward comfort, it rewards commitment. Not half-hearted commitment, not convenient commitment, but the kind that says, I will do this regardless of how I feel, regardless of who doubts me, regardless of how long it takes. That kind of inner vow separates the successful from the spectators. That level of loyalty to your own vision reshapes your entire environment. And here's where most go wrong. They treat commitment like a feeling. They act only when they feel inspired. They move only when they feel energized. But true commitment is not emotional. It is moral. It is a personal code. And when you operate from that level of internal ethics, you no longer allow mood to determine movement. You no longer give excuses power over execution. The man who forces himself to stay committed when others quit becomes unstoppable. Why? Because he no longer relies on motivation. He has evolved beyond the shallow waters of feeling and now sails on the deep ocean of purpose. He's not checking in with his mood, he's checking in with his mission. He's not looking for applause, he's locked in on outcome. And this is why everything begins to align for him. Not because life is easier for him, but because he is now operating on a frequency few ever reach. Success becomes inevitable not because it is handed to him, but because he refuses to be denied. He continues to plant when others pause. He continues to build when others break, and each day of consistent effort is another brick in the foundation of his breakthrough. Eventually, things begin to fall into place because he forced himself to keep going when everything told him to stop. The truth is, there are invisible forces around you: time, opportunity, momentum, and they only respond to those who are consistently in motion. You cannot stand still and expect the world to open up. You cannot drift and hope to arrive. You must move daily, decisively, deliberately, and that movement must come from a place of principle, not hype. Not emotion, but unshakable principle. When you move like this, when you force yourself into daily discipline, you are signaling to life itself that you are ready, that you can be trusted with more, that you are serious, and life responds to seriousness, not talk, not declarations, but demonstrated seriousness. And seriousness is proven through sustained, repeated, consistent action, regardless of external reward. Now understand this next law. Clarity is not given, it is earned, and it is earned only through action. The greatest mistake people make is waiting for everything to make sense before they begin, but it never works that way. The plan is revealed in pieces. The path is lit one step at a time. You will not see the entire staircase until you climb the first few steps in the dark, and those steps require force. You must force yourself into action long before you feel ready. And the more you act, the more the fog begins to lift. The more you do, the clearer the picture becomes. Action gives you feedback. It tells you what works and what doesn't. It sharpens your instinct. It builds your experience, and most importantly, it teaches your mind to trust your own leadership. People think they need clarity before they commit, but the reality is, commitment produces clarity. When you commit first and act with force, your mind begins to align with your objective. You begin to see the world differently. You notice opportunities you were blind to before. You interpret setbacks not as failures, but as part of the shaping process. All of this becomes possible not because you were lucky, but because you forced yourself forward without all the answers. This is the hidden advantage of the action taker. He learns faster, grows faster, and adapts faster. He becomes his own source of momentum, his own engine, and the world starts adjusting to him, not the other way around. People begin to respect him because he respects himself, and that respect was built in the fire of doing the hard things when no one was watching. Every time you act in spite of fear, confusion, or doubt, you strengthen a mental muscle that most people let wither. That muscle is called decisiveness, and decisiveness creates direction. Direction creates confidence, and confidence creates clarity. All of it feeds itself, but only once you begin. Only once you force the initial movement. Only once you push past the friction of inertia. Do not fall into the trap of overthinking. Overthinking is the assassin of progress. It paralyzes action and glorifies indecision. The thinkers debate while the doers dominate. You are not here to merely analyze life. You are here to build something, to become something, to transform, and that transformation requires action. It requires decision. It requires you to move while others discuss. The great paradox is that the more you move, the more you learn. The more you do, the more you discover who you are. You don't find purpose by sitting still. You don't find passion through guessing. You find it through doing, through testing, through pushing, and every time you force yourself into new levels of action, your mind begins to connect the dots. Your skills sharpen, your intuition deepens, your mental patterns evolve. You start understanding not just what you want, but why you want it, and this knowledge becomes a weapon. It becomes your compass. But none of it appears until you act. Until you force yourself forward without needing to know what lies beyond the hill. So many people are trapped in their own mind. They dream of better, but they never do better. They wish for more, but they never move toward it. They convince themselves that more information will save them, that more time will solve the problem, that more clarity will fall from the sky. But nothing comes. Nothing changes, because change belongs to the man who moves, and so the decision is simple. Not easy, but simple. You must force yourself into the unknown, into the uncomfortable, into the uncertain. Because that is where your future is waiting, that is where your transformation is hiding, and only action can unlock it. Only consistency can reveal it. Only force can break the shell of who you've been and expose the greatness of who you are becoming. And once you start, once you truly begin, you will find that the very act of forcing yourself daily becomes the key that turns confusion into clarity, resistance into reward, and pressure into purpose. When you force yourself to take consistent, disciplined action toward your goals, the world begins to respond. You rewire your mind, strengthen your spirit, and build momentum that transforms obstacles into stepping stones. Faith grows through motion. Clarity follows commitment. Resistance becomes fuel. Success doesn't favor the lucky, it favors the relentless. Every act of force shapes your destiny and commands your environment to align with your purpose. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Move. Act. Decide. The moment you force yourself to rise, everything starts to fall into place, not by accident, but by your design.